Hello, and welcome to this episode of Gardening in the City. My name's Kane Adams, and I'm with the City of Murfreesboro's Urban Environmental Department. Today we're going to talk a little bit about crepe myrtle pruning. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to whack this thing in half. No, I'm kidding. That's not what we're going to do. We see that a lot all over. It's not just limited to our area, but that is not what you want to do to a crepe myrtle or any tree for that fact. What happens when you do that is you take off all the buds that are available for that tree when it first leaves out to go ahead and start making food. So when you do that, it doesn't have anywhere to have any new growth on it. So it has to push buds out through all the bark. It pushes buds out from the bottom. It suckers out and goes crazy. And it's going to make your job of keeping this tree pruned a lot harder. So it's something you really don't ever want to do. There's a few structural, a little bit of pruning we're going to do today. And to be quite honest, once we get that done, this tree's not going to need much more than a few snips every year. Before you do any type of pruning on a tree, you've got to have an objective. Why are you wanting to prune this? What does this tree need? One of the things I see a lot is trees get over pruned and for unnecessary reasons. This tree right here at one point has died back to the ground when we had a freeze about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's come back, and we haven't really done a whole lot to it. This is back here on the back of our property, kind of the area of misfit trees. But we need to look at this tree and show you some problems that we got going, and we got to have a clear objective. In my opinion, the best time to prune a crepe myrtle is early spring before it leaves out. You can see all the branches, you can see the structure of the tree, and make a really good decision on what to remove and where to make the cut. These branches provide insulation for really cold winters, so we don't want to take any of these off too early. Much rather wait till later in the year and take these off. Because what ends up happening is if we do get a real cold winter, some of these tips might die back, and if you can go ahead and take those off and not disfigure the tree that much. But if you go ahead and do a heavy pruning on it in the fall and it ends up killing the tree back a lot further, you're going to have to take a lot more off this tree, and it really is going to be disfigured and not be very salvageable. But we're getting ready to get in on this and start pruning on it. So before we do, we really need to identify some of our goals and our objectives for what we're trying to accomplish with this pruning. And this tree hasn't been structurally pruned, so let's start taking a look at some of the areas we want to try to see if we can fix and correct for long-term sustainability of this tree. Well, we're going to start by taking a look at the base of this tree, because generally all the problems that this tree has started at the base. This tree was keeled back all the way to the roots. I think it was April of 2012. We had a real good warm up. Everything was leafing out and growing, and then the bottom dropped out. It got really cold, and a lot of these crepe myrtles got keeled back to the roots. This right here is a stub left over from the original tree itself. These were all cut back after the tree died, and all these different trunks you see right here is where the actual rootstock flushed back out. Now, when these rootstocks flush back out, that is the very crucial time to make sure you get all your pruning done properly. What you want to do is you want to select the trunks that you want to keep and remove the ones you don't want. And we've got an issue right here that I don't think we're going to be able to fix. This one right here should have been removed when they started flushing back out. But if we try to make a cut right here, what we're going to have later is we're going to get a lot of growth coming out of this area, and it's going to be a lot of maintenance long term. Some people would go ahead and remove this. I, for one, don't like cutting suckers every week off the bottoms of crepe myrtle, so I'm going to leave this right here and see if there's some way I can address this further up the trunk. I don't think I will be able to, but this is just something I think I'm going to live with. This is the trunk we were talking about that needed to be removed as the rootstock flushed back out. As you can see, these two are touching, they're crossing. That's two of the things you're trying to eliminate when you're structural pruning. They're not really rubbing to where there's a wound yet. You can see a little bit of a spot right there, but I don't think this one's going to be able to be removed without having a bunch of suckers flush out of the bottom, so we're going to leave this right here for right now. Here's an example of a wound where two branches were rubbing up against each other. As you can see, that's down to the heartwood, and that's a prime location for disease and insects to enter the tree. All right, so we're just going to kind of continue to move up this trunk, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of clear trunk here. There's not any branches down real low, and that's the way I like to get my crepe myrtles over time, so I can move around. You can even see some old pruning cuts that are healing up right nice. But as we get up here, we need to start thinking about where do we want our lowest branches. And I don't know about you, but I do not like walking around my yard, whether I'm mowing my grass, weeding beds, whatever it is, and having tree limbs hitting me in the head. This tree is really not quite tall enough to take up that high yet, but we're going to go ahead and start pruning it and taking some of these lower tier branches off to keep the growth forcing upward. So we're getting ready to start taking some limbs off this tree. We're going to start by going around and taking some of these small limbs that are below the area I want to have clear trunk from. So we're going to work around the outside of the tree from the get-go, and then we're going to come back and address some of the structural issues on the interior of the canopy. All right, we're going to go ahead and make our first cut here, and we're going to show you what not to do. You do not want to leave a stub, and you do not want to leave what they call a flush cut. So this is a stub cut. As you can see, you've still got a pretty good stub here. You want to make your cut right outside of this swollen tissue area, and you don't want to make it inside of that area. So I'm going to go ahead and make the proper cut right here. This branch collar's got properties in it that's actually going to seal this wound up and heal it, and more than likely you're not going to have a lot of water sprouts or sucker growth come out of this area. Well, as you know, once you make a cut, you can't put it back. So anytime you're pruning a tree, make sure to go slowly, be sure of your cut you want to make, and take your time. All right, I made my first pass around the tree. I've left a few branches that were kind of questionable. I think I'm gonna have to dress at a different time. This was one of those right here. I couldn't decide if I wanted to leave it or cut it off. And after making my way around and kind of getting a general idea of how much I want to take off, I think this limb right here needs to go ahead and get taken. All right, I know I've used the term structural pruning a couple times already, just to get a little further in depth. Structural pruning is when you have crossing branches, dead limbs, weak attached branches, or rubbing limbs. That's what you're trying to fix and get rid of those issues. And as you can see right here, this is a really good example. You've got two branches that are touching. That'll eventually wound right there, giving an increase of insects and disease to get into the tree. As we move up and away from that, we've got another area over here that's got about 4 different branches touching, rubbing. This area up here is got quite a bit of issues in it, but I think I'm going to be able to correct this with just about 2 or 3 cuts. All right, in order to get access to this right here, this limb, I need to make sure to go ahead and get rid of this, because I'm going to have to come from the back or right here at the front. This little limb's going to be in the way, and it's also growing up and crossing back into the canopy. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that one because it needs to go anyway. So now I'm going to move around here. Go ahead and see if I can get rid of this little booger that's in the way. To make a proper cut on this branch right here, I'm going to have to come from the bottom, and I don't want to make just one cut, so I'm going to do a 3-cut method where you make an undercut first to keep this from tearing. I'm going to go ahead and take the majority of this off, and then I'm going to come back and make a cut right here at the base. All right, that's got the majority of that rub taken care of. So as we're going to start working our way around through this tree, we're going to go ahead and start taking care of some of these little crossing interior branches. All right, here's another good example of 2 limbs that are crossed up and rubbing. I'm going to go ahead and remove this branch, and then I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the rest of the canopy and remove any other crossing and rubbing limbs right now. Here's a really good example of some preventative pruning we're going to do. As we move up through here, this growing back into the canopy, and as the canopy gets larger, the different branches in the canopy, and this branch gets larger, it's eventually going to rub on something and cause another wound. I'm going to go ahead and start taking these out and address any other structural issues, taking out anything that's rubbing, and going ahead and getting these crossing branches out. Well, after about 10 or 15 minutes of actual pruning, this tree has probably 90% of the errors on it corrected that we could fix. There's a few more on it, but I didn't really see any sense to over prune this tree. And with any good pruning job, it's really hard to tell that anything was done. As you can see, the pruning job we did didn't change the shape of the tree any bit. We kept the same canopy integrity of it. Crepe myrtles are very low maintenance, so there's no need to do a lot of pruning. Do a little bit of pruning here and there on it throughout the year, you're good to go. Hope y'all enjoyed this episode of Gardening in the City. If you've got anything that you'd like to see featured on our program, please contact us at the number listed below, and thanks for watching.